Hello everyone, my name is Roya and I've once again read 9 books in the past 2 weeks, so bear with me while I try to cram as much of an explanation of each of them as I can in a limited time so that I don't just talk your ear off. So firstly, we have The Glass Rights Apprentice by Mindy L. Klasky. This is about a girl who comes from a lowly merchant family and she has a rare opportunity to become a glass rights apprentice, but in doing so, she finds herself being suspect to the prince's murder because she's just in the wrong place at the wrong time and gets framed for all of it. And so she has to run away. She pretends to be a random street child and all this stuff, and in doing so uncovers what is really going on. So this was really good. I thought that it could have been, you know, the narration, the storytelling style could have been a little more gripping. Six Gun Snow White by Catherine M. Valente. This was a little bit disappointing because it is really short and really lacks any kind of detail to the story. So it is kind of a cool take on Snow White in that it is Western and our main character is Native American but raised by a white family, and all kinds of just really stuff that could have been really cool, but it was actually just really boring and really didn't have any world building or any explanation of any of the stuff that's going on, and I was kind of sad about that. Angie Kills a King by Evan Lakeham. This was really good. I actually heard some really polarizing stuff about people really disliking the main character, but I did not feel that at all. I loved the main character. I didn't find that there was anything that, you know, that someone could say they couldn't stand her, any of that. She seemed like the typical main character that I would want to read about. Like, she has a personality and isn't just bland, and I love that. So anyway, this is about a girl who has killed a king, a horrible king, but she is obviously now on the run and a bounty hunter catches her, and she cannot get away from this woman. And it's so good, it's so weird, and it's just really knowing that that the author came up with this idea based on what if someone offed the president really made me feel like, okay, I get what this is about and I get what this is examining, and I feel like maybe I wouldn't have liked it as much if I didn't necessarily know that angle of it, but I also feel like I still would have as well. And the thing is too that we actually do get to see some of the impacts that the bad king had on the society. It wasn't, because I feel like very often when we get a bad ruler in a story, we don't really see what is so bad that they're doing. But in this, there's so much going on where we understand why this king was so bad. Eliza and Her Monsters by Francesca Zappia. This was my, like, I'm not feeling well and I just want a cute little feel-good story book. So this is about a girl who writes a webcomic that is really, has really taken off and has millions of followers, and it's kind of like people just generally know about it. But nobody knows who she is. And then one day, a boy transfers to her school and he turns out to be the best known fanfic writer of her webcomic, and he has no idea who she is. This turned out to be really good. I did find that there were a few little details where I thought that the story could have been better thought out, but overall, it was a really good plot. It really did. It wasn't super unbelievable that she is that successful as a webcomic writer. They totally explain it, explain how it goes on. It even takes into account the fact that she's paying taxes, and her parents don't know about it and all that stuff. It explains why all of that is, and basically she's navigating all of this about her family being very, very different from her and not understanding what it is she's doing. Her parents have no idea that her webcomic is that successful at all. her brothers are just like really athletic and just like to play sports, and she doesn't like to play sports at all. And she's very like, she just wants to be on the internet. The only friends she has are online. And I found it to be so relatable in a weird way. Four Winds by Kristen Hanna. This is about a family during the kind of Dust Bowl era. So basically we start off with a girl in the 1920s whose parents just like don't like her. They just kind of hate her, and because she's just like ugly and shy and was a sickly child, and they just think that she's not going to amount to anything. And then even when she goes to the store, you know, a guy with a fabric store is saying, "Oh, I just got some fabric that your sisters can make a dress out of," like not even thinking that she could make a dress out of it for herself. Like she's just completely dismissed at every turn because she's just not pretty. She's not anybody who stands out. And then so one day when she meets a guy, of course she sleeps with him and gets pregnant because he's the only person who's treated her with any kind of actual respect. And so she ends up marrying him. Fast forward several years, and she has a 12-year-old and an 8-year-old, and the 12-year-old hates her because she's a daddy's girl, and she just thinks her mom works all the time, when actually her mom just found a family that she actually belongs in and genuinely likes doing farm work and has her reasons for doing that. And then her husband leaves. He just says, "I'm going to California," because the whole family says that that's unreasonable and there's no reason to go to California. Just because they're suffering doesn't make California better. It's not guaranteed that they would find any success there. But then she does have to take the kids to California because her son almost dies from dust inhalation. So she does have to at least go to California until the land is kind of taken care of and there's no longer dust storms. So she gets to California with her 2 kids. She basically has to sleep in a homeless encampment because nobody will hire an Okie or someone from the Midwest who came to California. She's not even from Oklahoma. She keeps saying we're from Texas, but Okie is like the slur for like people, you know, migrants basically. And it's just so weird how much this parallels how our society treats A, homeless people, and B, immigrants in general. Basically, this whole society is just so dysfunctional in the way that it does not take care of people who, you know, it just kind of dismisses, you know, just all these people who do have success just thinks that the people who don't must be just bad people or something, like this whole time. And there's such a weird survivalistic aspect of this book that was just so good. I could barely put this down. It was so weird, and I really, really liked it. Kingdom of Claw, this is the sequel to Road of Bones, and I don't know why I necessarily continued with this series, but I did find that this one was so much better than the first one. We actually get our main character's sister as a secondary, like, main character of this book. She's in a completely different place, has her own completely different angle on the story that's going on, and she's kind of a political prisoner a la Sansa Stark. In being the daughter of the overthrown king, she is basically being manipulated by the people who are in power now, and I found her angle of the story to be so much better than our original main character, who was still a main character in this, and I was not a fan of her part of the story any more than I was in the first book. Even though she kicked her love interest to the curb, she just turned around and had a completely different love interest, and that also similarly came out of absolutely nowhere, and there was nothing to that love story. It just didn't make any sense. Whereas her sister, with the far more entertaining story, also had a love subplot, but somehow that was a much better story. So over here we have actual story that does just happen to have a love subplot that works, and then over here we have just 2 chapters of sex in a row. It's like, why? there was nothing that made me care about this relationship over here. It's because the story over here was so good that I cared about the relationship over here. So it's just so weird, and it did leave off on such a weird cliffhanger that it made me want to read the third one, so I'm gonna do that soon. Homeseeking, this is a kind of generational story somewhat similar to Four Winds. It was actually oddly similarly themed and kind of takes place in a similar time period, only in a completely different country. In this, we follow two people who grew up together in China, dated briefly, kind of meet each other as adults, but don't get back together because they each have their own shit going on. And then as older adults, they actually do become friends again later in life. And we get all of this in kind of a splitting up the timelines type of thing. Like we do actually start our story when they are older, all of that other stuff. And it was really good. There were parts of this where it's just crazy what happens to them in China, and then the way that one of our main characters has to marry a guy just because he coerces her with his wealth and basically gives her no option but to marry him when she doesn't love him at all. And it's just so messed up. It's like, can't a guy take no for an answer? What a tool. And it was just horrible reading about that, but I just couldn't put it down. I was just like, please leave him, like please run away, like all of this stuff. It was just so weird, but I really liked it. Dogs, Boys, and Other Things I've Cried About by Isabel Klee. This is a memoir from someone I follow on Instagram for dog fostering content, basically about fostering dogs and about being a young person in New York City not knowing what she's doing with her life. And I thought that this was so good. I mean, there wasn't really a plot that I can talk about. It's just kind of slice of life, real life struggles, struggles with, you know, different dogs that she fostered, that type of thing, and the dog she ultimately kept, and all these failed relationships and why they were so bad for her and all of this. And it was so weird how good this was. I could barely put it down. And finally, The Last Contract of Isako. This was my favorite read of the month, and one of very few 5 stars that I've given this year. I don't even know how to explain it because I went into it pretty much blind, and I think you should too. I am struggling to find any kind of summary for this book because it is so all over the place, but suffice it to say, it's a sci-fi. It is really well thought out, world building wise and plot wise. I totally called the twist. I knew exactly what was going on, just because one person said one thing at one time, and I kind of thought, huh, and I thought maybe I was just losing my mind because it was such a minor detail, but then it turned out I was totally right, and I was like, wow, so that's how thought out this whole plot was. It was just so good. And I love that this book deals with things like, you know, not waiting until people are dead or missing to check up on them. You should still check up on them when you have the chance to. And just the things that matter in life not really being what matters, and just everything in here being absolutely nuts. And I loved this book so much. I literally don't even know how to adequately explain this book in a way that does it any kind of justice, so I'm not even gonna try. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you've read any of these books and have any thoughts on them, and I will see you very soon with a new video. Bye!